breaking news in college football. Pete Thamel, Nick Saban's retiring.
So this has been a thing. This has been a thing today that a lot of people have been DMing me about. And we have been kind of waiting to hear about this.
And it's actually Chris Lowe at ESPN reporting it, Pete Thamel retweeting Chris Lowe. So I am surprised by this. Very surprised that Nick Saban will go out on a losing note like this. Very surprised.
Well, I think he is. And this is the thing that I think a lot of people have talked about. I don't think he views it as going out on a low. I mean, Nick Saban is he is the single greatest coach in the history of Alabama football.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I think he's the single greatest coach in the history of college football, period. I mean, is there even if you think about the college coaches of your lifetime, is there even a second one?
No, I don't think so. I mean, even with what Kirby's done, he's still not matched Saban, and I think you got to give Kirby a lot of credit for the dominance that he built in the Georgia program. But Nick Saban is the standard. I just don't think there's really, there's not even a legitimate second. I mean, there have been guys like Dabo or, obviously Urban did some winning, but you look at college football and I don't know that there's been, now Jim Harbaugh, I don't know that there's been another guy that's won quite at the rate that Nick Saban did.
This absolutely is a game changer. And I am very curious to see how does Alabama react to this? I mean, I think you look at, the news of the day in coaching. Pete Carroll fired by the Seahawks. Nick Saban retiring from Alabama. I mean, these are gravitational changes. And obviously, you look at Nick Saban, there is no other standard than what Nick Saban's done at Alabama, resurrecting that program, putting guys in the NFL, a defensive guru, certainly a talent evaluator and developer, maybe like none other we have ever seen. Nick Saban, his retirement today, according to ESPN, Nick Saban is retiring at Alabama. His retirement is no different than Tom Brady walking away from the NFL, Michael Jordan walking away from the NBA, the titans of the sport. You have to put Nick Saban into that conversation. And I don't know how Alabama ever moves on from this. I don't know how you replace Nick Saban. You replace him by putting another coach in there. You're not going to replace Nick Saban.
Mm-hmm.
This is that style of character. This is that style, that magnitude of person where Nick Saban retiring from Alabama today, according to ESPN. There were reports earlier in the afternoon that Nick Saban called an emergency 4:00 team meeting today where he was going to tell his team that he was retiring. I mean, it is a shocking, shocking story because Nick Saban, as you'll remember, has so vehemently denied that he was going to retire. And when they lost to Michigan, he denied that he was going to retire. And now it's such a critical juncture in the season. Nick Saban today, according to ESPN, he has not come out on the record officially and said it, but today, Nick Saban is retiring in Alabama. Again, I don't think we'll ever see anybody like him. I really don't.
Yeah, I think Nick Saban is, again, you set the Alabama love or hate aside. I mean, just the job he's done is just, it's second to none, dude. He's the GOAT. I think, just the same way that Bill Belichick ran the NFL for all those years, Nick Saban's run college football. I would even go out and say that Nick Saban has defined and laid the blueprint, created the blueprint, the foundation, the road to building a championship caliber football program. And he's shown you he's done it a bunch of different ways. Some years it's through quarterback and wide receiver. Other years it was through running the football. Other years it was through defense. And I think that's what tells you that the guy is absolutely a master of his craft, because no matter what he's got to work with, he's finding a way to be in big bowl games that have championship implications at the end of the year. So the reality is it's a huge loss. Now, I also think that in these times, instead of saying, man, we're losing an icon of sport, let's celebrate this guy. I mean, you don't, like, guys like Nick Saban don't just, fall off of trees, as they say. So it's a hell of a career. And I'll be very curious to see who decides to try to fill his shoes, because you don't want to be that guy. You don't want to be that guy that's following Saban. That's a tall order.
No, Nick Saban retiring at Alabama with 7 national championships, 11 SEC championships, a record, as you see, at 292, 71-1 as a college football coach. Absolutely a dominant force. 201 wins and 29 losses at Alabama is remarkable. And you start looking at his, do you guys understand his SEC record at Alabama is 117-18 at Alabama, 28-12 at LSU, a dominant force in the SEC. And you look at the national championships, you look at the unbelievable success, the bar that this man created. I don't know how you put into words how special and how impactful and how remarkable Nick Saban has been as the head coach at Alabama. And now he steps aside. And I don't know what college football will be like without Nick Saban, because frankly, Nick Saban is the greatest coach of my lifetime. And as an adult, I don't know that I don't believe I've known college football without Nick Saban. Whether it was Toledo in 1990, Michigan State in 95, to LSU in 2000, to Alabama in 2007, a remarkable, historic career comes to an end today as Nick Saban retires at Alabama. It is shocking.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately I don't know where Alabama goes. I don't know. I don't know that it's time to even guesstimate where he goes. But I think now you look at the face of college football. I think the game changes now. And you can't help but wonder if Nick Saban has lost some fire for the game because of the, I don't know, is the word ecosystem, because of the culture of college football now. You feel like, I don't know that any of us can even argue that has to be playing a role.
Yeah, I think, college football has obviously changed, and Nick Saban is one of the great mentors and inspirational speakers, motivational speakers. He understands how to get kids to grow and how to help them grow and how to help them to become more disciplined. And I think it kind of cuts the knees out from under a guy like that when you've got the transfer portal and NIL doing what the portal and NIL do, which is, hey, I'm not getting playing time, going to go to another program. Okay, fine. It used to be that if you committed somewhere and you were on the Crimson Tide roster, you were there for 3 years.
Yeah.
And you didn't have a choice, and you were going to buy in or you weren't going to play football. And I think when that was the case, Nick Saban was a Titan, and that thought lines up directly with when he had his most successful seasons. And I think you're seeing those guys that played for him during that time are now in the league being productive NFL players. So yeah, I mean, I tend to agree that with the changes in college football, that has probably taken some fire out of him. And that's understandable. I get it, man. It's kind of a racket now, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I think it is very difficult. When you look at Nick Saban, I mean, this is a historic run. You guys understand? He won 6 national championships at Alabama, 1 at LSU. I mean, that this is over now. It is like, is this where the SEC takes a turn and goes downhill? I don't know. Like, who replaces Nick Saban? I think that is immediately the question that you have to ask. And I mean, obviously, the names that are out there are going to be obvious. Lane Kiffin, Steve Sarkisian has to be on that list. I highly doubt Kirby Smart and the guy who wants the job almost desperately is Dabo Swinney.
Yes.
Almost. I mean, he is going to, I would think, go hat in hand to Tuscaloosa to try and get that job.
We built this program on NIL.
I mean, how would he not, right? I think he is a guy, and it would be a good hire if there's a personality who can dadgum handle it.
Seriously.
It is Dabo Swinney. But right now, I just think that maybe it's inappropriate even to be guessing at who replaces Nick Saban.
Yeah, I just think it skips the moment. It does a disservice to what Nick Saban's accomplished. I'm a big believer that when someone who is accomplished and done what Nick Saban's done in his given field and in his craft, retires or they move on from their career, like we need to again celebrate these people. I've kind of been on this thing lately where it's like, hey man, like let's not mourn the loss of someone, whether that's professionally or in life. Like let's celebrate who they were and what they did. That's what life's about. I mean, this guy is, what is it, 6 national championships?
6 championships at Alabama, 1 at LSU.
Like, come on.
I mean, obviously the things that change about Alabama is Nick Saban's a culture.
Yes.
I think with all of the motivational speeches we've seen out there, with all of the impact that he has had on humans and the lives of his players and humanity in general, the philanthropic things he's done, the community things he's done, the things you never hear about, it's unbelievable. And the only thing that you can say is what an incredible ride Nick Saban has had as a head coach at Alabama. And to go from LSU to Alabama, I mean, it's nothing short of remarkable. And again, to finish 292 wins, 71 losses in a tie, and 7 national championships. I don't even know how do you best that? How do you beat that? Because I don't think anybody ever will.
And I also think in today's day and age in college football, the other thing we need to say about Nick Saban is that he did not lead a scandal-ridden program. And I'm not even talking about like Michigan this year. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about in general in college football. Alabama under Nick Saban is a crown jewel. It is a standard of professionalism, success, discipline. Like it's the benchmark. And I think, whether that's about Alabama as a brand now or Nick Saban as a brand, however you want to look at that, like I just don't think that that's really arguable. Like it truly has been, even if you just look at it from the college football playoff standpoint. How many people did I get in the last month, screaming down my ear, God, I'm tired of Alabama? That's a testament to Nick Saban. That's a testament to all the staff he's had through the years that he's grown and developed that then went and defined college football. You understand how many dudes are out there as head coaches now that he's got his thumbprints on, man? Like, that's what I'm talking about. This is bigger than just like the SEC or, who's going to take the job next. This guy defined college football from what, 05 to now at a minimum. Like this guy was the standard.
Yeah, he was. And I'm just curious who is it that replaces him? And I see the wild speculation, and the thing that I would say is you better go get somebody that is young. And this is the thing about Dabo that I think probably is a strike against him as the leading contender. If I had a head coaching opening right now, I'm probably calling Dan Lanning. I mean, that's probably my first phone call.
Yep.
Is to Dan Lanning. I am probably, if I'm Alabama, I think you can have just about anybody you want. But I think that person has to be young. I think that person has to be aggressive, and that feels like Dan Lanning to me. I'm not even sure that there's a second choice. I think Dan Lanning and Dabo Swinney probably are the two most prominent names that you are going to hear to replace Nick Saban. And I mean, justifiably so. I mean, if you could hire any coach, I mean, I don't know that there are better names than that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Dan Lanning's a really good one. I think because like the first thing I think about before I start considering names is I think about, okay, well, what is what is Alabama football now, and what are you trying to continue through Nick Saban's retirement? Well, I would think you're trying to continue the professionalism, the good image that you have, like the standard of the football program under Nick Saban. I would think you're trying to keep that standard as close to it is now with whoever you hire. And so for that to take place, you need someone who's disciplined. You need someone who is a true professional, and someone who's not a risk taker in the public eye. And so, yeah, I like Dan Lanning. I think, Lane Train is a good candidate, but I'm not so sure he's edgy enough for the Alabama job.
I would agree with that.
He's a little, he likes to run a little bit looser of a program, I would say. He's a little bit more of a player's coach. So I'm not sure that would be a great fit, but he's definitely a candidate.
The guy that probably will piss some people off, but what about Mike Norvell at Florida State?
Yeah,
I mean, he's done a phenomenal job, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you look at what he's done at Florida State. Florida State was not in a great place when Mike Norvell took over, and he's brought them into a much better place. And I think he deserves a lot of credit for that. But I can tell you this, I'm not looking for, I'm not looking for the Ryan Days of the world. I'm not looking for those guys who've shown me they can recruit but can't win at the highest level. If you've been losing Nick Saban every year, that's one thing, right? When I look at these candidates. But if you're a team, or if you're a guy that struggled under an Ohio State funded program, like that level of program, I'm probably not considering you for this job.
You better be pristine. Nick Saban was bowl eligible every single year of his college career.
Yeah.
You understand? The guy I believe there was 1 year at Toledo where they didn't go and they won 6 games. Every other year of his career, he went to a bowl. I mean, his record speaks for itself. I think it's an enormously important job in college football. And, as we go through these conversations and we talk about the importance of the SEC, I think the thing that is so incredibly important is Alabama is important to the prosperity of college football. It is the behemoth. It is the Lakers. It is the 49ers. The New York Yankees. Pick your team. It is that caliber of program, and Nick Saban is a big reason why. But you've got to hire somebody who is young, who is aggressive, who can recruit, who can keep big talent there, who can, I think, get in the portal, get into NIL. One of the things that Nick Saban was never comfortable with was the changing economics of college football. I don't believe that he ever embraced NIL or the portal, really, for that matter. I think that's all out the window, which, again, is another strike against Dabo Swinney because he doesn't want to do NIL or embrace the portal.
In God's name, image, and likeness.
And I'll also tell you, you look at a guy, a damning piece of evidence against Dabo Swinney, DJ Uiagalelei, who was nothing short of a headache and a distraction at Clemson for Dabo, is now one of the better quarterbacks in college football. And I think it's awfully difficult if you are Alabama to look at Dabo and say, yeah, you're the exact guy to take us to the next level, because I don't think he is. And you know what? I think I look at Dan Lanning. I mean, Kalen DeBoer at Washington certainly would be somebody you would think of. I mean, obviously he can recruit, but I think Dan Lanning, I think Lane Kiffin.
Dan Lanning strikes me as a guy that's ready for an upgrade, but is never going to quit at Oregon. Like, he would only leave Oregon if an Alabama level job became available.
I would agree with that. Where are you going? Are you Mario Cristobal to Miami? That's not Dan Lanning.
Nah.
Dan Lanning, if he leaves Oregon, is going to wind up at a place like Alabama. I don't even think that it is. I don't even think that it is arguable that Dan Lanning, if you hire Dan Lanning to replace Nick Saban, you're living life right. I don't think there's any question about that. But I understand what this profile has to be, in my opinion. Young, aggressive, NIL, portal guy. I think you better have a defensive-minded coach at Alabama, because that conference is so dominant that you have got to win with defense in that conference. And I think if you're Dan Lanning, you showed that you can hire an offensive staff who can. And he's very clearly a guy that knows how to recruit physical football players.
Yes.
So he just fits the entire billing, in my opinion. Dan Lanning would be my first choice.
I think guys like Lincoln are probably out of the conversation, though. Lincoln, Lane Train, Hell, even Sark is a real interesting one that I'm sure will come up in this conversation.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that Sark is. I mean, Sark is running a good ship at Texas, but I'm not sure that I'd want to hire Sark at Alabama to replace Nick Saban. I think, and I'm trying to think of other guys, not just in college football, like if I'm Alabama, I'm looking NFL. I'm looking at guys that work in TV,
But
college
I
coaches.
think you also have to understand the culture in Tuscaloosa.
Mhm.
Dan Lanning was there. He was a graduate assistant there, right? And you look at Dan's resume and you understand that he coached at Georgia and he understands the system. He understands Kirby Smart. He understands the culture at Alabama and the culture of the SEC. I think he has to be your number one. I think at Dan Lanning, the more I think about this, the more you look at it, Dan Lanning is the perfect fit at Alabama. I just don't think there is any question in my mind that he's the guy to take the reins there.
Yeah.
How is it not Dan Lanning?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I completely agree. I think, again, for Alabama, the biggest thing here is you got to be really responsible. And I agree with what you're saying. He's got to be a young go-getter that understands portal and NIL.
Has swagger.
Yeah. I mean, because that's the thing with the Alabama job. These bigger jobs, it's not just like whether you can coach X's and O's. Like everybody has an X's and O's philosophy on how they want to try and win a ball game, but you got to have vision. You got to have, whether you want to call it swagger, bravado, you got to have an energy about you. You got to have vision. You got to understand the responsibility. Like this is no different than any of the other iconic head coaching jobs in college football. Alabama's on that list. And so for Alabama, yeah, Dan Lanning probably is the perfect fit. Now, whether Dan would leave Oregon to take the Alabama job, I think he would. But whether he would or not, that's what I think your bigger challenge is for him, because he's just gone on the record this season and said, hey, yeah, I'm not looking at anything else right now. I'm really happy here. We've got, my family loves it. We're good.
And the funny thing about Dan Lanning is when he got hired, I think we all wondered how long would it be before he jumped to the SEC. I mean, that was the conversation around him because of his ties to Alabama and Georgia, obviously. But this is the next logical progression in his career. And this is the biggest issue for Oregon and programs like Oregon. Oregon's not a destination. Oregon it has largely, if you look at the history and maybe Bellatti's after Bellotti or whatever you want to point to, but you look at Chip Kelly, arguably one of the biggest personalities, the biggest names at Oregon. He jumps to the NFL and then comes back to UCLA. You look at that job, Mario Cristobal. Mario Cristobal left for his dream job at Miami. And I know that's his home and there's all that BS. Oregon's not the final stop. It is a stop on your way.
It's a launch pad.
And I think that Dan Lanning, because I there's no doubt that Dan's going to recognize that the iron's hot, because I don't think it was accidental that he did ESPN and ABC during the national championship games. I don't think that was not accidental. He shined. He's a media personality that put him in front of every college football player in the country, every high school football player in the country.
I was pleasantly surprised with what he did on ESPN.
Yeah, that was not accidental.
Yeah.
And I think if we're talking about who the right replacement for Nick Saban at Alabama is, and if you're just tuning in, Nick Saban retires, according to Chris Lowe at Alabama. He has told his team in a team meeting today in Tuscaloosa about an hour ago that he is retiring as a head coach at Alabama. And just the end of an era of college football.
Yes.
It is the end of an era. But if you are, I don't think about what is in your head if you are Steve Sarkisian right now. I think what's in your head is, man, it got easier to win the SEC today.
Certainly.
Right? Because I don't think Steve Sarkisian's the guy that's looking to take the Alabama job.
And I don't think that, if you're Sark or any of those other guys in the SEC, you're sitting here saying, hey, man, that's one less guy that we got to worry about, while simultaneously celebrating the path and opportunity he created for you.
Yeah.
And I mean, Sark
Yeah.
and Saban is well documented. Lane Train and Saban is well documented. Like, I don't know, man. I just think that, yeah, Dan Lanning is a great fit, and if they hire him, well done to Alabama. But I think that we need to spend a lot of time, pondering and reviewing and considering just all the impact that Nick Saban had on college football.
Yeah, I think
I
think he absolutely changed the way that we considered football. Nick Saban was one of those guys that scared you. Nick Saban was one of those guys that physically and mentally intimidated the teams that he went against. And I think it is absolutely the end of an era in college football. I don't know how else to describe it. The guy failed at almost nothing. And it is just remarkable the success he had. Absolutely. All right, let's get your comments in here on the Monty Show. As always, I ask you to hit the like button. Please subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. If you are watching on TikTok or Twitter or wherever, please find us on YouTube, The Monty Show. Give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel as we talk about the retirement of Nick Saban at Alabama, presented by our good friends at BuckedUp. BuckedUp Energy is going to power us through the rest of the show. Buckshot in the description below. There's a link to get 6 free buckshots, which is the best energy shot you've ever had. 200 milligrams of naturally sourced caffeine through green tea leaf extract. And it does exactly what it says it's going to do. It's going to power you through the rest of your day. And you're not going to get some big spike. You're not going to get the face tingles and the sweats and then a huge crash, because they use elite ingredients. So if you got that pivot table or the Excel spreadsheet, a big presentation, maybe you got to meet with your team and tell them you're going to retire, you better pop a buckshot first. There you go. Blue Raz. I'm telling you, it's the best flavor in the business. I love it. Watermelon's my second best. Hook it up right now. BuckedUp.com. Use the promo code Monty to get 20% off at checkout. Big Blue Horses. It says the NCAA are sanctimonious pigs trying to stay relevant, while the courts in the college football in NIL era leaves them behind. Okay. That seems aggressive.
It's one take.
Yeah. OG Gary, Saban was Bama. Saban was the Tide. Mad respect to Nick Saban. Thanks to Saban for memories through the years. Goodbye, legend. And no, the SEC still alive and well. Well, I
certainly
think
the conference is healthy, but you can't sit here and deny the fact that Alabama changing head coaches and really changing culture and just changing everything inside that program.
Yeah.
You can't deny the fact that makes them vulnerable from a football standpoint.
Yeah. And again, you don't lose whether you're a university, a football team, a conference. You don't lose Nick Saban and not have a fall off. And I think it's very interesting timing that Nick Saban is retiring with all of this realignment and all of this change going on in college football.
And the end of the 4-team college football playoff.
And who's going to hire him to do TV? Because you can't tell me dude's just going to kick it in the lazy boy.
He feels like a CBS guy.
Well, I think he feels like an ESPN and ABC guy because they have the SEC contract.
Yeah.
So I think that'd be interesting. Lopes fan Gabe says, am I the only casual wondering what the bucked up hunter is up to today? He references Aaron Wilson, who Aaron Wilson gifted a Monty Show membership.
Let's go, baby.
Kaufman gifted 5 Monty Show memberships. Lopes fan Gabe gifted 5 Monty Show memberships. Love it. Joseph Harper for $5 says, wow, Carroll ousted and Saban retiring, and the Jagoff Eberflus lives on. What a day so far. Yeah. We'll try to find time to get to the NFL coaches now, obviously. Kaufman says, I think it's the right time for Nick. The real question is, what does his retirement mean to the SEC? I think it means we're going to find out how attractive that job is. Because I don't believe that you can go hire somebody with no NFL experience. I think if you are doing that, you are taking a huge risk at Alabama, or with no college experience. So an NFL guy Like and a buddy of mine texted me about Sean McVay. I think, with all due respect to my guy, I think that's one of the most foolish suggestions I've ever heard. Sean McVay has 0 college football experience. And in my opinion, you cannot take that risk. And Sean McVay is a great young football mind. That's a massive risk if you're Alabama.
100%.
You cannot go and take a risk like Sean McVay. I think your bar is one of the top coaches in the profession who's got ties to the SEC. I think that's hugely important. And again, I think your low point is Dabo Swinney. I think you have to shoot higher than Dabo, because I do think the last couple of years Dabo's been damaged at Clemson. I think with the way that the program has faltered, and I don't know if it's inability is a strong word with a coach the quality of Dabo Swinney, but his inability to leverage NIL in the portal to build Clemson football and maintain that level. And that's maybe the best, feather in the cap of Nick Saban. He hasn't exactly leveraged NIL in the portal, and he's kept Alabama at the top of the poll year after year after year.
How did he do that, though? And I think this is what Dabo needs to learn, and this is what other guys need to learn. Because, again, I'm going to keep saying it. Nobody has done what Saban's done. Nobody's had the continued success at the level that he has had, which is national championships secured and won and put away. And so Dabo's thing is that, hey, we were good when Trevor Lawrence was there. Yeah, we were good. We had a good team. But the problem for Dabo is you're playing in the ACC, not the SEC, right? So you're playing in a conference, with all due respect, that is one of the weaker conferences in college football from an on-the-field perspective, and you can't even make the college football playoff consistently, let alone compete for a natty, 70% of the time.
Do you understand the stability that, there have been 54 coaches hired and fired in the SEC since Nick Saban took his job. 54. That's unbelievable. Unbelievable. And again, I think the TV thing's really interesting, because you're going into a new contract with the just about every conference in the country has a new TV deal.
Mm-hmm.
And Nick Saban's leaving the SEC after the final year at CBS. If you're ESPN and ABC, you got to go hire him.
I agree.
Right? He's already on Pat McAfee's show every Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping he'll be on tomorrow, because I think it's absolutely must. You've got to hear from him. He's got to do a presser now. I just don't see any way that you don't.
Yeah, I think that, I guess maybe this is my tip of the cap to Nick Saban. I would expect him to. Nick has never been a guy that's dodged the media. Nick has always been a controller of the media, meaning he does all his availability. He knows how to handle the media.
Yep.
So I would, and again, I'd like to point out too, Nick Saban, in my opinion, has done this the right way as well. He's just come out of the blue with it, which I'm a big fan of. Hey, I know I'm Nick Saban. I know that I'm a big deal in the college football world. So I'm not going to do some reunion tour for the season and distract my players and stuff. I'm going to, after the year's over, I'm going to make it about me for a 3-day period, and then we're going to move along and everyone can keep college footballing. And I appreciate that about him.
Yeah, just a massive day of news as Nick Saban retires as a head coach at Alabama. And, just the repercussions and the ripple effect that this is having across the sports world tells you what his impact is. And we want you guys to react with us. Please hit the like button on YouTube. Give us a comment. Who do you think should replace him? What do you remember about Nick Saban? The press conferences are amazing.
Yes.
That the halftime interviews, obviously the wins and the losses, the Iron Bowl, just the BCS national championships, the intimidation factor. Those are all the things when you say to me, hey, what do you remember about Nick Saban? I remember I think I've only interviewed him 3-4 times. I remember being nervous the first time I interviewed him at Sporting News Radio, filling in for the great Tim Brando on his show. It was amazing. The guy just does everything that needs to be done, has an answer for every question you ask him. I say this now, as I said about Tom Brady, the day that Kobe died, Michael Jordan's retirement,
Tiger.
Tiger Woods. I say this about all these guys. I hope that we have the ability to enjoy these guys while it's happening. I hope we have the ability to enjoy, who's the best quarterback in the NFL? The Patrick Mahomes of the world. I hope we have the ability right now to understand what we're watching with LeBron James and the Lakers, what we are watching with, Shohei Ohtani and the Dodgers this coming season. Like, take the time to understand how special Nick Saban is and was and forever will be. And we don't, because we don't live in the moment in this world, but we have to in sports, because car accidents take Tiger Woods from us. Helicopter accidents take Kobe Bryant from us. Nick Saban up and retires. Like, you just have to appreciate it while it is in front of you. And I hope that people do. I hope we understand how special national championship games are, how special, the moments that we are so fortunate to have in sports are.
No, I mean, think about that last championship between Bill and Tom. I mean, if you're Bill Belichick today, you're looking at Nick Saban retiring, and you can't tell me you're not thinking about it. Can't tell me that it's not, at least somewhat on your mind. Or maybe,
you have to.
I mean, you're considering all your options if you're Bill, and obviously, Bill and Bob Kraft are going to talk, and all that's going down, but I think the Bill Belichick thing is very similar to what Nick Saban did in college football. I mean, again, say what you want about Bill Belichick. There's that contingent of people who say it was Tom, not Bill. I'm not really here for that. Like, look, the guy's got 7 championships for a reason, and I think that we need to put respect on these guys' name. And so I hope that guys like Bill Belichick or, whoever you want to point to are remembered the way Nick Saban's going to be remembered, because that is the other thing I can say about Nick. There's no question how Nick Saban will be remembered. He will be remembered
absolutely
as the best college football coach to ever do it. In my opinion, you may have a different one, but my opinion is he's the best to ever do it. He's certainly the best college football coach I've ever seen in my lifetime. The impact he has with young kids, 20-year-olds, is truly incredible to me. I mean, you think about how different the world is even 10 years ago when I was 20 is truly incredible how different the world is now. And so I look at this and I say, hey, give Nick Saban respect for everything he's done, not just the wins, not just the numbers, but just the impact, man.
And it's funny, a friend of mine in the business is texting me. A source that we talk to often is texting me and telling me that this was the plan either very early in the year or before the year started. This is not a surprise to the University of Alabama. That according to what our sources are telling us, Nick Saban and Alabama were on the same page that this was going to be his final year. So there have been plans in place. And another source texting me, Dan Lanning's absolutely the guy at Alabama. And I agree with that. I think Dan Lanning's the exact right person to be in this position. But if you're just tuning into the show today, Nick Saban announced to his team this afternoon that he is retiring as the head coach at Alabama. Nick Saban departs the Crimson Tide with a career coaching record of 292, 71-1, and he has won 7 national championships. It is the end of an era in college football. It is the end of an era at Alabama, and we want your reaction on the show today. Hit us in the comment section if you're watching on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Make sure you get to YouTube, find the Monty Show, give us a thumbs up, and subscribe. Delaric says, I don't want to be the guy after Saban. I want to be the guy after him, because if you don't pick up where he left off, it's a short-time job. But see, I don't disagree with that by any stretch. But that's why you can't hire Dabo Swinney. That's why you can't hire
a flameout, dude.
You can't hire a Sean McVay and take a risk like that. Yeah. With all my guy who texted me,
with
you can't take a risk. Guys like Dan Lanning, the reason you hire a guy like Dan Lanning is he's ready for that next step. He can, because what are you going to have to do at Alabama to succeed? You're going to have to recruit, develop, and win. He's shown he can do that at Oregon to a certain extent. Obviously, losing twice in one season to Washington was not ideal. I think it helps him that Washington went on to play for the national championship.
Certainly.
But he's shown an ability to work the portal. He's shown an ability to have NIL. He's shown an ability to work with massive boosters. I don't know of one that's bigger than Phil Knight and Nike at Oregon. He's shown an ability to operate and has the skill set that you will need to succeed at Alabama. I think that almost immediately is what you have to consider at Alabama. Now, we also know that Alabama has been aware of this. According to our sources, Alabama has been aware of this for some time. So this is not a shock. This is not a surprise. I have to believe that Alabama has a plan in place. I have to think as well, and we could get excited about the Dan Lannings, the Dabo Sweeneys, the Lane Kiffins. They must have internal candidates. I have to believe that there are people in that program that will get an opportunity to take that job. I have to believe. I cannot believe that they would simply have Nick Saban and then go interview exterior candidates. I'd be surprised if there were not one or two guys in that program that are bucking for that gig as well.
Well, and if it's truly a thing, where Alabama and Nick Saban are on the same page, for this season, this was the plan. You can't tell me that there weren't discussions about, hey, like, who internally would you recommend? Who, is there someone that you feel like could fill your shoes? And I don't know, I tend to agree there's probably a couple people in that program that can handle it. But I also think that if you're a staffer under Nick Saban, we have no idea who you are. We don't know who you are.
I would agree. One Mike gives us $2 to ask, what about Urban Meyer? Come on, man. Come on. First of all, does Pervin Liar want to come out of retirement to go take the job at Alabama? One, if you're Alabama, do you even have, or do you have a desire to want his phone number?
Nope.
You do not. I think Urban Meyer, obviously with his time at Florida, his results are not in question. His methodology is in question. And at Alabama, I think you're coming out of a guy who called out his own basketball coach and said there are no wrong place at the wrong time. Like, he called out ethics of other coaches at Alabama. You're really going to hire Pervin Liar to come in with his blonde friends at sports bars and replace a guy the ethical quality of Nick Saban? Nah, I don't think you're doing that.
No, not a chance.
I don't see any way you're doing that. Jesse Crum says Meyer is not coaching again. Jacksonville psychologically ruined him. Well, I don't know about that. I don't know about that, but I think that's, I think that Urban Meyer is not the guy. And Greg Hawkins has been listing off every name in the book. Like, I don't know what. I guess we're trying to be funny with replacements, but okay. John DeLon, Urban Meyer is busy being cringy on Fox pregame, and it's not great. It's not great at all. Right? Like, Urban Meyer, I would never even consider it. Boyd Lake, how are you? Tanner Plummer, Andy's in Salt Lake tonight. Scott, who's in Salt Lake tonight? What did I miss? Scott of Greywater Watch. With all due respect, Joker is the best NBA player in the league.
Okay, cool.
Way to be on topic.
We'll see you in the 5 o'clock.
San Diego State, Aztec. Glenn, what's up? How are you? What's that line? Oh, it's a high watermark made by Nick Saban.
Yes.
Right? I mean, how do you even compete with what Saban has done?
I think it's truly a thing where, like, and let's just use Dan Lanning as an example, because I agree he's a great fit. If you're Dan Lanning and let's say you take the job, you step into that role, your mindset can't be to try to top what Nick did. I think your mindset has to be, okay, we need to put a plan in place to continue to compete to win the SEC every year. Every single year, we have to be a double-digit win team. That's the standard. If you're a 9-win team at Alabama, you've let down Alabama filling in for Nick Saban. You
100%.
need to be a 12, 13-win team at Alabama. No doubt about it.
I'm just going to ride the wave on Dan Lanning.
And Pete Thamel's tweeting Dan Lanning's buyout is $20 million. I assure you,
that's
Alabama is not sweating that money.
I mean, I wonder, I don't know. I haven't seen Pete's tweets. Kalen DeBoer is 12. Dabo Sweeney, $7.5 million. James, is Alabama hiring James Franklin?
Not a chance.
Mike Norvell's buyout. See, That's a name that I would quietly.
Dark horse.
Mike Norvell at a $4 million buyout at Poverty University, FSU.
Dude, we've been having a good show. Like, come on.
Why? I think you there's no price you don't pay to get the best available coach. That is because that's a huge job. Boyd Lake, would Whittingham take a call from Bama? I'm sure he would, but again, what's the profile? What's the profile of the coach? Like I see everybody saying, that you want to have Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll doesn't fit. Pete Carroll got run out of USC.
Yeah, that's not going to work.
You're not going to hire Pete Carroll. What is he? 72 years old?
Yeah,
you're not going to hire Pete Carroll. You're going to hire, in my opinion, the young, aggressive coach who's shown you he can recruit NIL and portal, that he can build a program and win. And I think the prerequisite of them all is you have to have SEC experience. And if you have ties to Alabama, that's even better. And I think Dan Lanning checks every one of those boxes. Was a GA at Alabama, was a linebacker coach at Georgia, knows Kirby, understands Kirby, can recruit against Kirby. $20 million is a drop in the bucket.
And you don't have all the ACC drama when it comes to Dan Lanning.
Correct.
And I think, and again, I know it's not Mike Norvell solely doing all that stuff at Florida State. Like, I know that's kind of a pretty deep bucket there, but like, he's part of that situation. I mean, he's shared his, he's had his fair share of words said on the Florida State issue. So, I'm not so sure that Mike Norvell, now that I think about it, I'm not so sure that I love Mike Norvell. Yeah, he's a candidate, no doubt about it. And that tiny little buyout's definitely attractive. But I got to say, I was a big Dan Lanning hater early in the season, not a fan of how he handled Dion and all that nonsense. But you got to give the guy respect. I mean, the guy's just gone out and done a lot of winning at Oregon. And I know he came up short. Losing at home to Washington's unacceptable, but he has all the things you need to be successful at Alabama. And to that end, I can't even think of another guy that A, checks the age box, B, checks the personality, energy box, and then C, understands, the responsibility that you're taking. Because I truly believe that's what we need to be saying. I mean, if you're going to take the Alabama job, you're taking on a huge responsibility, not only at Alabama, but in college football. Like, if I told you 2 years from now, Alabama's a garbage program, that's not good for college football. That is really bad for the SEC if Alabama were to just tank or become a program that's, an 8-win average thing. Like, that can't happen, man.
Yeah, and I'm really curious, what list emerges. I think it is very, very interesting who will have the courage and the fortitude to even attack taking the Alabama job. I mean,
look at this. Look at it. And I just want to put this into perspective. This ESPN just tweeted this Nick Saban stat. He's got 44 first-round picks and 29 losses at Alabama.
Wow.
Dude, like, that's how dominant this guy was.
Yeah. I think it is not the job for everybody. I really don't. Eric Wasikowski from Plymouth Canton.
Yeah.
To put it in perspective, I hated watching Jimmy Johnson win 6 straight. But as time went on, I started to appreciate what he has done in his own sport. How can you not?
Right.
I mean, that's an excellent comparison. I think that's exactly right. Wayne Gretzky, Tom Brady. You look at Kobe and Shaq, you look at Michael Jordan, you look at the Celtics, you look at the titans of their sport. You don't have to like them, but you better learn to love them because they're the best in the business.
Bron and D-Wade in Miami, dude.
And you respect them.
Yeah.
And fear absolutely plays a role in respect, right? Like, I just think that's what we're talking about with Nick Saban. And I can only lobby for so long to like the idea that Nick Saban retired today and most people took for granted Alabama versus Michigan a couple of weeks ago. It's the last game we ever saw Nick Saban coach. It's over. Nick Saban's done coaching in Alabama. Let that sink in. So tonight, what I would tell you is find your athlete. If you're an NBA fan, or hell, if you're Big Daddy Magic, go slurp yourself some Wembanyama tonight, right? Like,
Here's the way.
Find your guy, find your team, appreciate it, because it is, I think, athletic ability and coaching ability is just so fleeting.
Yeah.
It is just so fleeting. John DeLon says, considering Lane's recent portal haul, would Kiffin be interested in Bama? I think Lane Kiffin would be in Tuscaloosa already if they called.
Well, look, the thing you need to be saying there, John, is who wouldn't be interested in Tuscaloosa? That's what we need to be saying. The reality is, though, Alabama should really only be interested in 2, maybe 3 candidates for real, like guys that they would truly consider to take the job. That list should only be like 2 to 4 people deep, honestly.
Yeah, I think it is. It's remarkable.